Hey y'all, welcome to a very special episode of CPOV Autographs. It is my 200th episode of this show. We've gone through network changes, format changes, a whole hell of a lot of guests. And for episode 200, I wanted to do something a little bit special. I invited my friends and my OG co-hosts for the Crash Chords podcast to join me for a catch-up and to reminisce. I was so happy to talk to Steve and John. I hadn't done a podcast with them in ages, probably about 5 years. And also, we just haven't really hung out much. So it was really nice to get to connect, catch up, and really explore where we've come from and where we're going. So thank you for joining me on this journey for 200 episodes. I can't wait to do 200 more. Here's my incredible chat with Stephen Nagel and John Sanders. Yeah, so I was emailing with Case, who makes all of my show art for this show and all my shows. And I sent him the request for episode 199, and Case was like, wow, 200 episodes. What are you going to do? And I went, I have no idea. And Case was like, you could have the Crash Chords hosts on. That would probably be fun for you, at least. I was like, oh, yeah, I could do that.
It's a full circle kind of thing.
I mean, we'll talk about it in the episode, but, like, Autographs started this month 6 years ago. So, like...
Jesus.
Yeah.
6 years. I guess that, and have you been consistent with like the bi-weekly episodes?
I've not stopped. I think I missed there have been weeks where I've lapsed because I was sick or something here and there, but never more than a 4-week lapse. Like I would just wait another 2 weeks to keep it on schedule.
So that's why I'm just thinking like 200 episodes should technically be.
It should be.
Yeah, I guess that should be.
It should be exactly. The reason it's 2 weeks earlier is
that's right, because you started midsummer in like 2014, yeah, or 2014.
2014, yeah, 2014. It's 2022.
That's
Steve.
That's 8 years.
That's 8 years.
Oh no! Oh my God! Yes,
that
it
is 8 years, man.
God.
Look, I'm a driving queer. I'm not a math queer. Everyone knows that. There's only two kinds. Fuck, 8 years? God, that just aged me more.
That's what the math I was trying to do. It's just like, wait a second, something is not dividing easily here with what you just said.
Fuck. And so the show, I mean, more or less, the show has evolved into, it's just a casual conversation, usually about the subjects I'm chatting with. This one will obviously be about Crash Chords a little bit, about our history together, and about what y'all have been up to.
Which we started 10 years ago.
Oh, I know. I also know that the last episode aired in July of 2017.
Geez.
Oh,
yeah.
God.
5 years.
Decade.
Damn. This is the halfway, but we had 5 years of the podcast and 5 years off.
Yeah.
We'll start it again? 5 years on? There's a cycle for as for our lives?
Yeah, maybe. I'm not actually against that, and we're actually probably going to go into it in the interview.
Yeah, I mean, Steve and I have talked about this before. I think it would never take the form it did before until I have a house with a recording studio, which we're not there yet.
Same here.
I just got my apartment back, so you know.
Yeah.
But
congratulations.
Thank you.
The great fire has elapsed.
It was almost 2 years, 21 months.
2 years.
Damn.
Unbelievable. But we're home.
What's with the round numbers? Everything is like round numbers with us.
Right.
This episode.
Just works out. It's perfect. So we'll chat. It's super casual. I'll introduce you both. Mostly talk about what y'all have been up to, but like this can get as goofy or as unhinged as we want. Like I don't care. This is me celebrating having done this for 200 mostly consecutive episodes. So like
Fun.
It's just whatever goes. And like again, it's heavily edited, so like if we interrupt or talk over each other, it's fine.
Cool.
Not a big deal. So
do your thing. That's your responsibility now.
I know. Yeah, exactly. I have to run all this. But yeah, no, I'm really excited. So I'm probably going to do some stupid intro spiel like I always do for this show. But I'm really excited to be chatting with two old friends. That word has two meanings now, as we are both in fact old and we've known each other a while. They are my former co-hosts.
I prefer the term ancient, by the way.
Ancient? Okay, good.
Yeah,
good to know. My two former co-hosts, though, because I say that the show is still never dead, just on hiatus, I guess they're still my current co-hosts for the Crash Chords podcast, and two of my good friends. I'm joined by Stephen Nagel and John Sanders. Thank you guys for joining me.
Yeah, it's just a vacation, right, John? How you enjoying your break?
It's been a little bit weird.
Yeah,
In fact,
5-year
probably a
vacation.
little bit more than a little bit weird over the last few years.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's funny whenever because I still have every guest at the end of the show say music is life and life is good. And I always set it up as my a phrase born out of my now on indefinite hiatus podcast, because it's an indefinite hiatus instead of it's over.
It's weird to think that you've been making like a running gag of it while I've been like, I used to be on a podcast at some point in the past, but you have to like speak. You actually speak about it because you're still carrying the moniker Crash Course.
I mean, until you helped me, a year ago, I was carrying the namesake too until I switched networks.
That's right, CPOV, but it's there in a way.
Yeah.
Well, it was Crash. It was like CC CPOV, and then you got way too tired of acronyms, and you just made it CPOV.
Well, I was going to make it just autographs, but that already exists. And so I was like, well, shit. And like, I don't know that I've actually said it on the air. I must have at some point in 200 episodes, but John actually gave me the episode for this show or helped me get there. Because I remember, I think either the three of us or just me and John are sitting there. And I was like, what the hell do I call an interview show?
No. You don't get to tell this story. I get to tell this story.
All right. Yes, please.
Because this was... It was at least 10 years ago that we started it. You were complaining that you wanted to do something with music over and over and over again. Like, I want to do a podcast. I want to do music. I want to do a podcast. I want to do something and put it out into the ether. And a couple of times, this was after only maybe meeting Steve 5 or 6 times personally. I know you knew him longer, but
yeah, we'd been to like a party or two. That was it.
Yeah, we got like drunk together once or something like that. And
who's this character?
Yeah, and I one weekend we were hanging out at your old place, and I was just like, I was fed up with it. I was totally done with it. And I told you to call Steve. I told you to quit bitching, and that we were going to start recording something next week.
An elaborate shitter get off the pot.
The name, we just kept going around and around. I don't remember if it was you that came up with it or if I came up with it or who came up with it. But it was like, as soon as we got that name, like, cemented down, that was the triggering effect. And all of a sudden it was like, yeah, no, we're gonna talk about music. We're going to try to do something. And then we made the first 50 episodes, which were something. And then we were a real podcast after that.
Yeah.
It only took about a year.
Felt pretty real. Yeah, I remember that name, that Crash Chords bit, because when you told me the name was Crash Chords, I was like, oh, jeez, I just got off a music degree here, and like that's probably a better name that I could have come up with for a music podcast. So I was like, it's good.
It's funny, Crash Chords. So John gave me the idea for autographs specifically, like it should be an autograph, like your signature, because you're interviewing these people, it's your personal touch. But like for Crash Chords, I remember it was actually Pete Kahn, mutual friend of the show, Pete Kahn's idea to use alliteration. Pete was like, look, people like alliteration, it's memorable, it rings, so think of something like that. And so like I was just like, I don't know. Chords, music chords, what could I, and so I think I came up with the finalized name, but like there was definitely a lot of playing with like alliteration and feeling like, all right, what two words with the same first letter sound good together in order?
It's just a beautiful play on like the crash course of the chords themselves, which is exactly what the show became. It was almost like before we had even really done that, because we didn't really do that quite so much in the first few episodes, but like it became that. And we lived up to the name. We let the name guide us rather than us guiding the name.
Do either of you, because I just looked it up, but do either of you remember the very first episode and what the first album we reviewed was?
I remember that was John, like basically doing the old
intro.
It was not the old intro. I think he was what was he doing?
I was
Strong Bad.
That's it.
Yeah, he was making fun of Strong Bad.
Dating ourselves even further. Great. I remember what it was. It was Linkin Park. Living Things by Linkin Park.
Man. So, okay, we're going to get into more about what you both have been up to, but Steve used to be able to do a fun party track, and I'm curious if he can still do it. We used to be able to mention an episode number, and Steve would remember what it was. And so we have 250 official episodes. We did a 251st episode where we swapped formats with another podcast, which I also think isn't around anymore, but good friends of ours, and that was like 6 months later or 8 months later. But we have 250 episodes. I'm curious if I can name a number and Steve can still remember the episode. Because I don't even know if Steve thinks he can do
This
it.
is going to be fun. We'll see. We'll see how ingrained it is.
So let's do easy. Let's go somewhere in the early days might be easier. Well, actually, let's do this. What's our last actual episode? Episode 249, because 250 was a special.
Yeah, and then 251 was actually a joke episode.
The spoof, right.
The spoof, yeah. It was just Colors by Beck, that Music A to Z did. But, or am I not allowed to say that? I don't know.
No, you can say that.
The cat out of the bag after 5 years? Okay, 249 was Migration by Manobo.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So I have to check your shit.
John's pick.
Oh, yeah, John, pick an episode.
No, I mean, that was John's, that was John's pick. I'm giving you additional information on top of it.
Amazing.
I still listen to that album. It's not my favorite, but it's still on rotation.
We haven't missed a beat. It's the podcast.
That's amazing. I love that you were able to just, I wouldn't have known if I weren't looking at it. All right. Episode 201.
201. First episode after our 200th episode spectacular. I think we started that with Red Hot Chili Peppers. The album... Yeah. Hold on. The album... What was the album that year? We started with Red Hot Chili Peppers. What did they do? I want to say like one of their early albums. It's not one of their early albums. It's a 2016 album. Oh. That I think you got me in the album at this point, but I remember
I'm
Chili
surprised
Peppers
you remember
distinctly.
the band. Yeah, it's The Getaway. The album.
The Getaway. Okay. I wouldn't have gotten that. I think that
that
got away from me.
No. That was not a very good album. No. I have a better question.
Okay.
What's the only album I missed?
Oh, that's right.
Wait, I got it. Due to... Hold on a second. Wait. But we had a guest in your place. That was episode 19. We had Nelson Lugo there, Sans John, and it was Until the Quiet Comes by Flying Lotus, which was one of my early picks.
And what was the only good song from that album?
Oh, I don't remember the name of the song. I know what you're talking about.
That's the melody. I don't remember the name of the song.
No idea.
But that's the melody. Go check me.
Putty Boy Strut.
Putty Boy Strut. That's it.
Cool.
Yep,
that was the only album I never got to trash on in the early days.
Yeah, that's true.
Otherwise, though, that song had a very cool music video.
It did. I remember us talking about it. Okay, so here's the thing that I want to ask, because I have this album that comes immediately to mind. Do you have an album that you still listen to regularly that you might not have listened to if it weren't for the podcast? And I'll go first because I listen to it still so regularly. It is Chambers by Chili Gonzalez. Whenever I have trouble sleeping or whenever I just want to relax, I put on that record and I always just vibe out to it. I still listen to it super regularly. Like, there are other albums that I liked or that I was introduced to that I listened to, but that's one that specifically I would have never listened to if it weren't for this show, that I still listen to pretty often.
I want to say that was episode 227. I think that's episode 227. I'm pretty sure.
I believe. I'll look it up while you give your answer. Okay,
my answer to that. Yeah, absolutely, there are albums I still listen to. I think one of them is, of course, not recently, but persistently for years afterwards, which was The Envisaged Conundrum by Godsticks.
For sure.
That one is, damn it, that was my answer.
That's episode 51.
Because I would never have listened to them had we not actually covered them.
Yeah.
By the way, you were right. Chili Gonzalez was 227.
Nice.
Still got it.
It's like crystallized memory at this point, you know? It's just like, I don't know. I'm trying to think of an actual example of crystallized memory in one lifetime, but there's really nothing that compares to this weird party trick.
And, I was like, you were wrong about Godsticks, but no, we did two of their albums because we did Emergence as well.
Oh, yeah, that was...
Which was 160.
Envisaged Conundrum was 51. 160 was Emergence.
Actually, probably, there is one album which I probably would have discovered much later on, but it is like a staple on my rotation, and that is both completely and individually, and that's FFS.
Oh, yeah. Sure, yeah.
181.
That one, Onward. That was, oh god, that's one of my favorite albums of all time.
Self-titled. Which also felt good because that was a guest pick. Somebody just randomly emailed us. Our old Mark, I believe was his name. And he was a regular or infrequent, but always very effusive listener who told us what we did. He loved what we did, and he wanted us to review that album, and we were like, cool. And it was like one we raved over, which for a guest pick I thought was really crazy.
Yeah, it's funny. I always used to think this was some freakish party trick that you could do, but I will admit that since starting Side Quests, which is for the listeners who may not know, it's a spin-off series of fun and games where I bring on a different host hosts each episode and talks about a game they love and why they love it for a short amount of time, 5 to 20 minutes. And while I can't always remember what number, I can recite whenever I have guests on other shows to promote Side Quests, I will recite what they brought on because I remember the subject matter because I edited them.
Yeah, it always depends on what it is. I mean, with me, just to sort of like man behind the curtain it here, because I was always like this weird party trick on the old show. But for me, it's probably a mix of OCD combined with the fact that I just really like lists. I'm the same way about like countries of the world, presidents, the years they were president, kings and queens of England, prime ministers. Name a list, and I don't know. I absorb it, and I like, it connects me to like the facts associated with those things. If you can just recite the things themselves, like if it's just like a list of categories, then your brain connects to the details about those categories. So you remember more information net overall when you memorize just the list itself.
Yeah, I think part of that is keeping the list for Side Quests is why I can always remember it. But it's just always very funny to me. So like, how does he do it? And I'm like, oh, I can do it. Cool. I didn't think it was a thing I could do.
Yeah, because honestly, by episode 19, I remember I was like, okay, this is going to get a little out of hand. I better make a spreadsheet. And I did that.
It's funny. I think about things now that I have for my podcast that we never had that would have, I think, ultimately made this show. It was already an incredible show that I love doing, but more incredible. Like the idea of Discord existing now and communities that there were chat rooms and other things back then, but Discord is really like a very good podcasting tool for communities. We have one for CPOV, but like, imagine having like our loyal listeners, the handful that would always interact, be able to chat with us in real time in what was essentially the same thing as the Slack we had. But like a Discord would have been so cool for this because we could have linked to a bunch of stuff and we could have like posted referential stuff. Like it's amazing to me that we didn't have any of that. And we still had people like Star F and Mark and others writing into us, recommending albums, suggesting albums. Like
there's a lot of things that are sort of like, kind of just slapping my head, like thinking like, God damn it, why didn't we do that? Like even this conversation right now. So like we're on Zoom, spoiler alert, and I'm making eye contact with you, even though this is an audio podcast, and it's basically just like us being back at the table in person. We did so much commuting, me and John in particular went through so much hell commuting, had many stories from commuting. And it just was so much additional hassle and like, drain on our energy stores. And we could have probably just resigned to do it over Zoom and recorded it exactly this way, not missed a beat, and probably even had more energy to expand the show and do even more things that we wanted to do.
Well, I think that's one thing we never really talked about when we were still doing the podcast on a weekly, or we never really went heavily into in depth of it, but it would be me picking up Steve from Staten Island, traveling over to Brooklyn. So that's a half hour right there.
Paying the Verrazano Bridge toll. Look it up.
Yeah. Finding parking, getting in, listening to the album for upwards of an hour, settling in, getting into the groove, then recording for 3+ hours. Normal nights, we were getting out of there like between 11:30 and like 2:00 in the morning sometimes.
Yeah.
It was a lot of roughness.
It was a lot
on top of listening beforehand. So we were throwing 8, 10, 12 hours of work into like a 2-hour podcast.
Yeah.
Which is why I really appreciate podcasters, YouTubers, and things like that make, pre-created content these days. Because I know for every hour on screen, there's 4 off screen you don't see about.
Yep.
And it's just it was just so much work.
I did a lot of scripting back in those days as well. I should say, over the course of the show, I began scripting increasingly more, which had I always started to say it's pros and cons. There was cons because of course it was taking a lot more time to do, a lot more prep work. And also the con of maybe losing a little bit of the off-the-cuff stuff that we had in those, not early, but early middle days when we were at least warmed up, but before we got anal retentive, or I should say before I got anal retentive.
Fair.
But then the pros were, of course, that I was able to be a lot more detailed about what I was talking about, and we could all be a lot more knowledgeable, and at least the majority of our facts could be correct, you know, and we tried to even make corrections after the fact. We really put a lot of effort. Not in the early, if we got something wrong in the early days, sue us. It was a 2012 podcast, but you know, in the later days, we really tried. We tried very hard. And if you know something got away with us, we felt bad about it, and we tried, you know, to make it right. So you know, there's lots and lots of hours on and off screen.
Yeah, I mean, also, it was like you were coming to mine and Sarah's apartment, and Sarah would have to take refuge in the bedroom because there was nowhere to really else be that she could make noise while we were recording. And
well, that wasn't even the only thing. We were also recording in your parents' place at one point. We were recording in a separate audio, your separate apartment at another point. We changed locations.
We were very rigorous about needing a place. Yeah, we needed a place to do it. And we did not, if the air conditioner was in the back, it did the sweating days of summer. I remember literally getting to the end of like a 3-hour thing, and we haven't turned on the air conditioner, and we're in a hot, sweaty New York apartment, and I'm just like, I felt so dehydrated, also because I'm drinking coffee the entire time.
Of course, yes. So that would make coffee for both of you.
It's the only way I could stay awake, you know, for that.
It's wild, like, and it was a lot, and like, we made it work for a long time, and then it eventually just became untenable. But like, I often think about now how we might do it different, how we would make it work, how we would definitely not do it weekly. Never in a million years this time round. Like, it's just the fact that we did it consistently weekly. So we recorded on Monday and released on Thursday, right?
Yeah, generally
right?
speaking.
Generally.
Some I think at some point we shifted to a full week behind, but we jumped around. Yeah. But we were consistent, very consistent with exactly 50 episodes per year. We took exactly 2 weeks off, even if some years some got a little bit clumped together, and other years we took more off. But then we would just bank a whole week's worth of episodes, and yeah, we were very regular with all of it. But also, remember when we like trolled our audience on the very last episode with all of our plans for the future?
Yeah, and things went to hell.
Yeah,
everything kind of got cluster effed at the exact same time.
Yeah, man.
Bunch of personal things and bunch of professional things. It went from the point of my business completely changed within just a matter of months. Steve,
I got a whole new job, basically a whole new career essentially.
Yeah.
And same thing happened to Matt on top of all the personal stuff. Yeah, and it just became to the point of, oh, we could take a 2-week break, and then we could take a month-long break, and then we could take a 6-month break, and then it's like, I haven't even seen you guys in 6 months, and it's like, I guess it's kind of done, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, it is, and yet it isn't, because as Matt said earlier, every once in a while, you know, on a 2 p.m. on a Tuesday, I'll just be sitting in my room thinking like, man, I'd really like to talk about this album with Matt and John.
Yeah.
And,
don't get me started.
And I think about ways that, as I just said, ways that we could have made it work, and also different formats and ways that maybe would also be maybe more appropriate for a modern audience, because I mean the podcast scene and the way podcasts are conducted has changed in 5 years, and from a lot of new content creators that I've followed, not even just in the music realm, I've gotten different ideas myself into how that could have been conducted. You know, we were always thinking about, should there be an additional show? Well, we don't have time for an additional show because we put so much time into the show that we have. But like, you know, now I think we'd probably be fresher for that stuff. It really would just be a question of our own respective time commitments.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's like, I need another hot podcast to host.
How many podcasts you got?
My head.
How many you got?
Currently, I'm hosting 4 different shows. I host this one still consistently, more or less.
Yeah.
I host Screen Snark, which I'm still doing with previous guests of this show and of the original show. We do Screen Snark together, Rachel Quirky Shank. Then Frankie and I still do Reignite. We've moved on to Mass Effect Andromeda, which I've never played, and so I'm going through it for the first time, even though they've played it a bunch. And I'm doing Fun and Games with my friend Jeff Moonen. And then technically SideQuest is a 5th show within that feed, but I count it as part of the same thing. But then I am the editor and sort of producer for both Men of Steel, which is a Superman podcast, and Another Past, which is a movie discussion podcast, both on CPOV. I very recently have been talking to the folks from Lore Party and might be helping them produce or edit their Dune podcast. And like, I've done a ton of freelance stuff over the years. I did the second season of Shut Up Evan, which is now over. Well, the show is going on. My tenure with them is over. At one point, I was hosting 4 shows and producing like 9. The number is now like 7. And some of that includes my own shows, which I help to produce. Though over the years, Jeff, Rachel, and Frankie have taken on more stuff. It's a little strange that I pivoted that way. Also, like after Crash Chords started to wrap up, I became more of a DJ. I was already DJing shows at the time, but I started doing private events. I bought my own gear. I started doing all that other stuff. And like, it's interesting to me now that I've even sunsetted that. Part of that is the pandemic. I saw the writing on the wall in the January before that February of lockdown. I went, I think I'm done with burlesque for a while. And then it went under. But like now the thing I do is podcasts, and I'm known for doing podcasts. And that's interesting considering where this all started and that it wasn't even my idea to start a podcast. It was John's idea after I bitched about it so much.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.
I don't know. Should you be thanking me?
I mean,
John had the idea, you had the name, I had the content. No, I'm joking. Joke.
Exactly.
Oh no, we just got you, Steve, so that we had somebody who could do editing. That was the main reason. Had nothing to do with the musical
local
background.
unemployed music graduate.
Yeah, had nothing to do
from
with
the
the fact
streets.
that you know jazz or that you know classical or that you actually can read sheet music and stuff like that. No. No, you know how to work Audacity. That was it.
Audacity. That's right. I was still Audacity back in those days. And Sonar
Yep.
Cakewalk. All that. I went through like
Sonar.
a bunch of cheapoware back in those early days.
I mean, I still use Audacity now. It works great for what I need it to.
Now I swear by Adobe Audition. I'm not getting paid to say that.
Most people do. But it's funny, like, John jokes about, like, am I glad this happened? I mean, I am. I do miss Crash Chords all the time. I loved doing the show. I definitely listen to a lot less. I don't listen to less music now, but I listen to less, like, music outside my comfort zone. It expands every so often because, like, a band will be on a video game soundtrack, like the newest. Speaking of our show, Life is Strange, one of the few video game soundtracks we did. The newest Life is Strange, True Colors, had an incredible indie soundtrack that I listened to all the time.
I loved it.
Phenomenal game, also. But like, I like also video game soundtracks. Like Steve, I wish we still do the show because like there's an indie game called Boyfriend Dungeon, which is hella gay. It's a fun dungeon crawler. It's great. Like it's a visual novel. It's got a lot of really great heart and story. The whole album for the game is like a synth pop album, and like you'd really dig it. Like it's just a wonder how much music is just like actual music being made. Or even the new Ninja Turtles game that came out, Mega Ran was on it. He did a rap track. RZA was on it, like did a rap track for the video game, things like that. Like so much stuff has changed in the landscape of music since we started doing this show that like, and every so often I'll even send you guys albums. Like I remember Steve, when the new Halsey album came out, I went, you have to hear this. I don't know what this is. It's great. You have to hear it.
Yeah, this I would say even sometimes I debate whether or not like much has changed in the landscape of music in the 5 years since we stopped doing the show. Right. Because sometimes, and it depends on your perspective, like sometimes I'll listen to, and I know I used to kind of like rant about this back in the day, but sometimes I'll be listening to like pop music and I'll be like, it's the same things. They're using some of the same things. Not everything. It depends on like what area of music you're looking at. Some like the synths themselves have like gone to, okay, they use different samples, different this, different that, and that's the whole vaporwave thing went off on its whole, kind of birthed a whole genre of its own there.
Hey, I like that. Don't be distant.
No, I wasn't hitting on that. It actually was good. That was a good branch. Good stuff. Good stuff. Getting under old battles. But yeah, I there's other things that I think have stayed very much the same. That I think when the market proves that it's marketable, then why if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So those things, I'm kind of like, okay, maybe I'm not missing much. And then what I do is I go back and I'm like you, and I stay in my comfort zone, and I'm not looking for those things that really are breaking the mold. Because if you don't hear a little glimpse of it, then you don't get inspired to seek more of it. And I fall into that trap. Or I just go back in time and I start listening to really old stuff. like classical and you name it.
Yeah, I hate to say it, but it's been pretty much the same thing for me. Like, without you two and our fans and our all picks and no picks showing up, I haven't really endeavored to jump into music for the sake of music these days. It's more of, well, like one thing that hooked me recently was the newest season of Umbrella Academy. One of the
Yes.
opening tracks, Crystallized by the XX,
Mhm.
2009 album. Went back, started going through that whole album, started going through that whole discography. But it was from that episode specifically. I think it was episode 5. Or one of the things, like my biggest complaint of the last few years is I was not able to dissect Inside with you two.
Oh my God, yeah. Can you imagine going
Oh
over Bo
God.
Burnham's record together? Like that was, I remember watching that comedy special with Sarah. And Sarah, like comedy, Sarah and I have a similar sense of humor, but when it comes to stand-up comedy, it doesn't always align, and especially music also. And like at the front half of that, when it's kind of just goofy and it's Bo Burnham being Bo Burnham, Sarah's like, "Oh, I don't know about this." But then when you hit that middle part, the part we all know about, you kind of go, "Oh, what is this?" And like, of
Yeah.
course, since then it's been incredible. But like, yeah, that's a music event that like even with the extended cut that came out recently, I listened to some of this music and I went, God, we would just devour the hell out of this.
Everything from white girl Instagram through internet through, oh God.
Yeah.
No joke, as soon as we set this up, less than 24 hours later, I was rewatching Inside because it was just like, I just got to get in the mood to talk about something, and that was one of my touchstones over the last few years. It was just stuff like that. The sad part is, it was because I was watching the video, though. Like,
Yeah.
I didn't find an album that way, and I haven't really been finding too many albums. And now with a lot of the politics that have been going on and things like that, I've been diving into like Flowbots and Rage Against the Machine and a lot of my old comfort, anti-establishment music. Or I've just been rocking out with indie, throw it in the background when I'm playing video games or something like that. I don't listen to music the way we did during the podcast years, during those 5 years of here's something completely different.
It is true that was kind of that podcast was a real push for us to go into our not so much our comfort zone, and then also the nice, it was a nice ritual, like this is my project for the week, and then you sit back and you close your eyes, and it's something that I always advocated back on the show, is like a real fulfilling way to listen to music if you can make it happen in your schedule, is trying to shut out the distractions and not making it the sort of musical wallpaper that we tend to want to, or just end up making it in our lives, something for a commute, or something for a soundtrack, something to accompany something else. It can, so much, is out there that exists and stands on its own and can be deeply fulfilling simply on its own. But you do have to like set it aside. You have to set it aside in the same way. You're like, I'm going to binge through this TV show. Think about music that way. It's just not always, our impulse isn't always to do that, because some of us are like, you get stir crazy, you're sitting in your chair, you want to be moving, you want to be doing something. At least with a television show, it like kind of concentrates your eyes, but here you can let your eyes wander, just concentrate your ears. That's all.
I mean, it's one of those things that like my habits with listening to music as an event in a form of media like TV and video games and everything else is definitely honed from the podcast. But like, I just don't have time to do it anymore. So my equivalent of that is doing the dishes or taking a walk or
out of context,
cleaning.
That's pretty funny though. I discovered dishes. Music is great, guys.
I mean, it's
dishes.
one of those things where my hands need to be doing. It's one of those things where my hands need to be doing something, right?
Yeah.
Like, but I don't want to be playing a video game. I don't want to be like, I don't want to do something that I want something that I kind of do on autopilot. And also during the pandemic, it's like, we don't want to go out. Sarah's high risk. Like, even taking a walk is a risk, even with the mask on. So like, I'll stay home and I'll just putter around the house and do chores or whatever. And that'll give me something to do while listening.
Suddenly it dawned on you, product placement.
Right. Yeah. I'm glad that your jokes haven't gotten any better in 10 years.
I'm sure they've gotten much more daddier.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, they were pretty daddy before that. Not that kind of daddy.
Not because I have a kid, but just because I'm I'm Steve.
You're an old man.
That's really it. That's really the only
fine.
explanation required. One thing about before, because, I did make the comment about how there's, in some areas, there hasn't seemed to be a lot of development, and what I do is when I notice that, then I just go back into my comfort zone, or I go back in time. And there was one weird case, which has received no shortage of press the last few weeks. Stranger Things, right?
Yeah.
Obviously source of a lot of music for people who want to delve into that soundtrack, but all exclusively in the 80s because it takes place in the 80s. And it has been responsible for actually propelling some things from the past back into the spotlight, such as Kate Bush, which was, I thought, really strange because here was... I was always talking about, back in the podcast, I always used to discuss these, these sad, dead ends, these tragic, music, types of music that started and then didn't really seem to be furthered upon. If only people would just go back in time and check this stuff out, man, it could be really inspiring. And I was talking with my friend the other day about Kate Bush and how Kate Bush was this kind of art pop darling, but it was rogue stuff even for the 80s. It was popular, but still a little bit rogue, and then kind of fell a little bit into obscurity. At least I don't hear it talked about nearly as much as some other major 80s bands. It was a little more obscure, and now suddenly top of the charts again. So not something new isn't top of the charts, something old is top of the charts. So it's a kind of a form of cyclical behavior that I think is actually encouraging.
For sure. I mean, also part of that is TikTok, right? Which I dabble in very, very poorly. But
I lurk.
Because TikTok allows for easy use of lip sync and sharing songs. When I was still playing Fuser and doing Fuser streams on Twitch, a good eighth of the soundtrack to Fuser was songs that I heard on TikTok that were pop songs or hip hop songs or whatever. But I heard them in rotation because they were popular on TikTok. And Kate Bush is another one where since Stranger Things, people have been using it in TikToks and online, and it becomes shareable, it becomes memeable. And there was time.
Every once in a while I will stumble upon an earworm. Sometimes there's good earworms and sometimes bad earworms, but they are earworms.
Yes.
They force them into earworms because then they just get copied over and over. It's just well, duh, you're going to remember.
Talking about music as much as we are, I definitely don't listen to newer stuff as much as I used to. And even genres that I loved, like nerdcore, hip hop and stuff, I've fallen behind on, haven't listened to the latest records from everyone. And I think it's partly because during the pandemic especially, you fall into your comfort zones. You want to feel safe. You want to feel good. But I'm curious if both of you had some go-to albums during the pandemic that you listened to a lot. I mean, that Halsey record I shared with you is one. The what was it, Dream Car that I shared with you, which was the Davey Havok from AFI band with the rest of No Doubt that sounded like 80s pop. Have there been any albums that really stood out to you during that time? I know, John, you said you weren't really listening to a lot. It sounds like Inside was kind of that thing for you for a little while.
It wasn't the only thing, because I wasn't listening necessarily to the album of Inside. I was watching the whole thing because so much of that music's impact is associated with the visuals both during and around the songs. But really, I was just banking on a lot of my really heavy emo indie style, Antler's Daughter. I love Daughter. Daughter's the one. Another album we never quite got to do was their work on the Life is Strange Before the Storm soundtrack, which is one of the things I wanted to bring on, just never quite got around to. Outside of that, I was just diving into Coast. I was diving into what's it called, Message to Bears. I was listening to stuff like that for the most part. That was my go-to stuff. Just to play the soundtrack in the background.
So you did kind of what I did. Is you went back in time in a way. Maybe not always so far back in time, but you went back in time. Yeah.
Yeah, it was all the stuff I kind of grew up with. Post classic rock and southern rock and all the stuff my parents gave me. It was the stuff I went into. So heavily into the softer sides of Weezer and Blink-182 and Green Day and things like that.
I think Matt was right. It's really the pandemic probably did make us go towards comfort stuff. Whatever experiences you were having during the pandemic, it was probably just sink back into a blanket of your own of yourself for a little bit. It's fine. It's okay. And it's not, no one's going to judge you. It's not everyone always needs to be in search of something new all the time. And often, sometimes, the harder you go into your own stuff, is you find new branches of that. I actually, something I did was I did discover certain things that I replayed a lot of things, but I also discovered a couple things that sort of seemed like no brainers a few years ago. I got pretty heavily into Sia, I never was really into Sia before. I mean, I never, not for any reason. I just didn't really expose myself to it a lot. The only thing I remembered from Sia was just like some of the really the big things that the big singles like Swing from a Chandelier, that whole Chandelier. But like, I never explored her discography, and I started doing that, and suddenly I'm really into it. So that, like, 2020 got a lot of Sia play. Her earlier albums, like late 2000s, early 2010s, and that was I would say that was pretty formative, or at least it tapped into those formative sounds that were formative once upon, and then kind of I saw her take on it, and now I kind of wanted to go down that alley.
Actually, yeah, that's actually where I kind of like I expanded what my comfort zone was. Like one of my favorites for the last like literally half decade has been "Dying Surfer Meets His Maker" by All Them Witches.
Oh,
Love the
yeah,
album.
sure.
Got
Yeah.
to see them in person like mere months before the pandemic actually hit. So they were playing a lot of their Sleeping Through the War stuff, and like I remember the actual concert. I remember enjoying Sleeping Through the War. So I started really expanding into all of their other albums. So I never really gave it a chance because it was just I found one album and one song I loved, didn't really dive into the other stuff. Or like um, the Antlers Hospice is a depressingly beautiful album, and I only knew them from one specific song. So I started going into that album and just fell in love with it. And then I started going to their other works. Like that was, I had my very safe comfort zone of like not just music, but books and television and that sort of stuff during the pandemic. But I used those to at least expand upon what I loved about the people and artists I loved. So started going into books by authors that I never would have read before because they were a little bit outside the genre that I loved them for, or watching TV shows by or movies different by the same director that I already knew, but something I never really experienced before. So it was stagnant, but it wasn't pure stagnation.
Couple of things on that. Well, for one thing, you said earlier about concerts, and how you had just seen them in concert like not long before the pandemic. And was it before? Did you say before the pandemic or before we stopped the podcast?
Pandemic. It was a few months before pandemic. Yeah.
Yeah. I had kind of a weird like a little bit of a FOMO sensation regarding that, considering that throughout most of those years prior to the pandemic, I was not as heavy of a concert goer. I would go occasionally, maybe like annually. Maybe I'd get drawn into a friend just coincidentally would happen to want to go to one of the same things I wanted to go. But I wasn't religious about it the way like some music fans are really religious about their concerts. I was the way I was in the podcast. I loved albums. I loved completed sort of painstakingly formed works of art. And that's what I liked and that's what I listened to. And it's generally what I won't say judged, but it's kind of that was my go-to for liking certain things in art. The kinds of like spontaneity that would come during a concert was great and all, but I liked to see things that were planned. And so I didn't prioritize concerts, but then I started missing it. I started missing it when you can't go, and it's not a matter of your own personal choice. It's like, I couldn't even go to a concert if I wanted to right now. I started really missing it, and I started to look at a few more live albums just to see if I could kind of bring that appreciation back to the table. Started having a lot more sympathy, of course, for the type of artist that lives for playing live, which I think probably is a more numerous type of artist than the type who lives to be playing things 30 times over in the studio until you get it right. Sometimes that could be really debilitating for artists. They want to be, a little free-spirited.
It is well known that artists make most of their money off of sales at concerts and deals. Like the record is like an afterthought for their actual livelihoods.
Yeah,
which is a terrible way of thinking about it, but yeah.
The economics don't work as well. Spotify doesn't pay great, all the way. It's just a shame because then it's true. I felt a little guilty. It's just like, here, I am not really putting a lot of money into the system with all my, Spotify listens here. So it's just like, I'd like to be able to go support my bands and buy t-shirts and do that again, but it's hard. And gradually it started coming back, and I weaned myself into it slowly with like a few of those safe early things, like those candlelight concerts that were advertised all over the place. They did it mostly for classical. I think they did it for other things as well, which was like socially isolated or separated, where you could be in a bubble or you could be several pews apart if it was like held in a church or something like that was putting on a piece of secular classical music. And I went to some very nice concerts around that time, maybe like after the vaccine, September or so. I started going to a few of those, and it was very nice.
I've only been to one concert, like real, like actual concert, since the pandemic started, which was, and John will appreciate this more than Steve just because it's video game related, the canceled Final Fantasy VII remake tour for the Final Fantasy Square Enix Orchestra to play those remixed, like those re-engineered tracks. It was supposed to have...
Wait. Which orchestral group was the one doing it?
It was, I can't remember. It might have been the one of the LA like Philharmonics. I can't remember. But like it was like,
I definitely would appreciate that.
It was one of those things where I wouldn't have gone when it was originally scheduled. I missed it, but because it got rescheduled and a friend had bought tickets, I was able to go with him, and it was incredible. And it was, they play clips from the game in the background, so you can see like the scenes in relation to the songs, and it was beautiful. But like, I think my last concert before the pandemic really got really bad, some might argue is better, but not better enough, was K-Flay. I saw K-Flay, and Your Smith opened for K-Flay, who is an incredible like indie rock crooner kind of artist. And like, I've been craving that experience again. That concert was one of the best concerts I'd ever been to. And I'd gone with Rachel, who is also a K-Flay fan. And like, I find that I chase that dragon a lot, but I haven't so much yet because we have to go back into the world because some of us have not had a choice. Like, I have a day job, and so I'm commuting into the office, and Sarah's commuting into the office and stuff. And like, we're taking as little risk as we can while still starting to live our lives again, because a lot of other people are too. And I understand that not everybody has that luxury, but like, I would love to go to a concert again. And I've been going to the movies as safely as possible and things like that, which has been nice. Like I can't even remember the first movie I saw in theaters again. It might have been Spider-Man No Way Home, but like, just that moment of being in the theater and everyone laughing at the same joke together was like, oh my God, I can't believe how much I missed that.
My solution to that, unwitting solution to that, is to go to the movies to watch movies that are 25 years old that they're already having the 25-year anniversaries for, because then they're going to be fairly empty. You can guarantee on it being a pretty empty theater.
Yeah, definitely.
And sure enough, my most recent foray there was one I talked back on the podcast a lot, the soundtrack for Fifth Element.
Oh,
that's
wow,
25 years ago now. 1997.
That would have been a nice one.
Yeah, actually experiencing that like on the big screen was pretty fulfilling, needless to say.
I actually had a similar experience to that. So like, we talked about The Matrix plenty of times on the podcast, and like, I had never seen it in theaters. I only had seen it on DVD after the fact, and like always had rewatched it on DVD. And then they were putting it back in IMAX earlier this year, I believe it was, as when we were recording. And a friend of the show, Patrick Willems, was going with a bunch of friends, and I was like, oh, I should go. And like, when I tell you that it was a religious experience, I'm not even that religious, but like, it was a transformative experience to see that movie in IMAX with the soundtrack, with the visuals. Like, it became my favorite movie because I could see even more in it that I didn't see the first time. And I've watched that movie a ton of times, but it was like a completely different experience in IMAX in the theater with people reacting to stuff and all of that. Like, it was incredible. And like, I'd never really had that experience with a movie before. Like, I've had that experience with newer movies. Like, Everything Everywhere All at Once is a phenomenal movie and it blew me away. But like, I've never rewatched an old movie in the theaters and been like, oh my God, this is the way to watch this movie. This is a great movie.
Some things were just not made to be watched on a screen the size of the palm of your hand. That's really just...
Yeah.
That's what it comes down to. Yeah, and honestly, you asked what I was listening to. I was listening to that soundtrack, Into the Ground, Fifth Element soundtrack.
I will say I did get to see The Batman in theater, and that was a great movie. Don't get me wrong. Excellent movie. Was so much better when I actually had it in the palm of my hands because I could see everything. But that's actually I have only seen three movies since lockdown was lifted, and it's been Spider-Man, Batman, Thor. Which,
Yeah.
if you haven't seen Thor, it was pretty good. It was no Ragnarok, but it was still pretty good.
It was fun. It was fun. It was big dumb fun, and I enjoyed it.
So campy in the beginning, but that's besides the point. And I still don't want to see anything in the theaters. Like the Marvel movies being the Marvel movies will probably be the only things. I just don't really want to see anything else in the theaters yet.
Well, hang on. Before we start trashing the theaters here, I did. It's also 50 years ago, so I mean we're talking about nothing present, nothing current, current events. But I can't believe we haven't talked about this yet. I mean, it's a little dated now because it came out last December. But you know, the Get Back documentary for the Beatles.
Oh, sure, yeah.
I watched all 6 hours of that on Apple TV, I think, or no, sorry, that was on Disney Plus, I believe.
Yes.
And then they also showed the rooftop concert, which of course that whole documentary discusses the build up to. They showed the rooftop concert section by itself in theaters around that time as well.
Oh,
and so I saw
awesome.
that. And
See, I only recently got a Disney Plus just to start catching up on a lot of things, and that's on the short list. But like between work and everything like that, I don't get much time to watch TV. When I'm the only time I really get to watch TV is as I'm heading to bed. So it's usually YouTube, so it's nice and quick, and I can just close my eyes halfway through an episode and not really care.
I think you would really enjoy the Get Back documentary if you can get.
Oh yeah, no, I'm still trying to figure out what tattoo I'm getting of the Beatles. Whether it's going to be the Yellow Submarine or the drum from Sgt. Pepper's album on my shoulder. I don't know which of the two. There's still one of the two. I'm still.
We'll check back in 5 years and see if you've made a choice.
We'll see what. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we'll give you some time. Well, yeah, it's funny. I actually found out about that documentary because someone brought it on as their thing they watched for Screen Snark, and like I had no idea it had existed. Like I just had missed that it was Peter Jackson. No,
Yeah, Peter Jackson. Who, by the way, I realized the kinds of things that he's interested in are almost as OCD as the kinds of things that I'm interested in. Because when he is interested in something, he goes all out. One of them is Beatles, and he knows like everything about every song, every little recording detail, studio detail. And the other thing is World War I paraphernalia. He has like a crazy collection, and I think he was responsible for that colorized release of like old World War I footage. But he knows a lot about World War I and about World War I aircraft. And honestly, again, not to open this Pandora's box, but like I find that stuff way more interesting than Lord of the Rings, which is what everyone knows him for. All that's the history, the grounded in the real world. That's what I'm about.
Well, we know you're an old curmudgeon and you don't like fantasy or make believe. It's fine.
No, I like science fiction. It's different.
I know.
I like a future grounded in the real world.
Speaking of science fiction, have you watched The Expanse yet?
No, still.
Oh, Steve.
I know. My cred is like ruined now because I haven't seen that, and yet I claim to be in science fiction. But that's just one of the things you gotta build up to, and then when I'm ready, I'll binge.
It's one of the best science fiction things to ever come out ever, and it's such a great show.
Yeah, no, he's 100% on board. It is an amazing show. Both the sci-fi era and the Amazon era. It's just amazing.
I'd be curious your thoughts on it, especially because it's a show that I don't think of when it comes to music. Like, there's music in it, but like, it's more about the moments and the like being in those moments. Like, there are no detractors, no distractions. I'm sure there's scoring, but like, there's not a lot of pop culture and pop song stuff in it. It's very much like grounded. Which is why I think you'd really like it.
That's how I like my science fiction as well. Those things that are kind of like they ground you in a time that is removed by removing everything that is of now. That if you anything that grounds you in today is not the point. It's not the point of something. It's to take you away from today. So I wouldn't expect them to slather a bunch of pop music over it. Yeah, that's honestly that probably was one of the most I think. It's something, honestly, that if we were still doing the podcast, just to swing back to the Beatles documentary real quick, if we were doing that, I would want to have a special episode dedicated to discussing that footage and discussing everything that you see, everything about the band's dynamics, even if it is just like kind of gabbing about their the sort of personal issues that they were having. It wasn't nearly as depressing, I think, as people thought it was going to be when that was coming out. Because what was the deal here? This was everything leading up to the rooftop concert, and it was in the very latter days of the Beatles. It was not very long before they broke up as a band. And that was the premise for this documentary, and it was also the premise for the earlier documentary using some of this footage back in the 1970s, which was not considered to be very good because it was said to have cast the Beatles in a bad light. You know, that it was like, oh, there was a lot of drama there. And it's like not how anyone wanted to remember them. They wanted to remember them for the work that they did. But this, for 6 hours, you know, I expected, oh, there's probably going to be a lot of drama. But really, it's just a couple of scenes. It's like a couple of scenes of like a little snarky comment here and there, which to me as a musician is like a perfectly reasonable thing. It's like, oh, yeah, George Harrison wants his own, you know, autonomy as a songwriter, of course, you know, and Paul is completely justified for trying to keep the band together and be the adult in the room. And, you know, even John, people gave him so much like crap in years later for being, he was probably belligerent. He was, you know, focused on his own separate things. He was nothing but, you know, well, at least in the course of those 6 hours that you see, he was nothing but, first of all, he's hilarious. He could have had a second career as a stand-up comedian in addition to being, you know, an amazing songwriter. And it was really more of a camaraderie experience than anything. You got to literally see immensely high quality footage of the Beatles at their peak of songwriting ability and creative talent. You get to see some of the songs that we wonder in our heads, how did this ever come about? You get to see them actually be formed right in front of your face. The tune Get Back, the namesake, literally is formed, the whole thing. Like, Paul is just like, you know, and then boom, it's formed in front of you in HD. It's like, people used to say, like, oh my God, to be a fly on the wall during that experience. You are a fly on the wall in this documentary. It's insane. It's the content from the past that you never thought you would get, but you got. That's my musical nerd out moment these last few months.
It's hard not to think about what we would have done, what we would do. I mean, I think that some of our most interesting episodes is where we broke outside our comfort zone or when we tried something different, like John's idea to do Life is Strange, and like for John and me to play it, but Steve, who doesn't really play a game, like play a lot of games at least, watched a Let's Play, like with no talking over it, just watched the course of the game. And I think we still just got just as much out of that. And like the idea of like doing an episode on Inside where we talk about the visuals that Bo Burnham uses as well as how the music just translates on its own, or something like this with the Get Back documentary, and how like discussing visionaries like this and how do you even begin to critique something like that, right? Because it's the Beatles, it's a documentary, but yet, you know, it would provoke interesting conversation.
Yeah.
I mean, we could create a whole new podcast right this moment for just doing podcasting renditions of Beatles movies between Yesterday, which was actually really good, or Across the Universe, or the original videos. We could do like 15 episodes off the top of my head and still not be repeating ourselves for quite some time afterwards.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the Beatles, it's funny, Beatles are one of those bands that you either absolutely love them or are completely disinterested. There's not a ton of middle ground, I feel like.
That's true, because it's just, they're talked up so much that, you know, people are either drawn in because they're talked up so much, or they're repelled by it, being like, ugh, this thing. You know, I confess to have fallen in that camp regarding other things, so, like, I see how it could happen regarding the Beatles. It's just, to me, it's just one of those weird cases of music that I think is written, is so far ahead of its time that I never remember listening to it and thinking that it wasn't ahead of its time. I never remember thinking about it thinking like, ugh, this is old. Like, it's just, the sound quality is just so amazing, you know, and the songwriting is pretty equivalent and also kind of responsible for a lot of the songwriting quirks that you see in a lot of present day artists. It's almost impossible to separate it in my head. It's worth analyzing, which is what we do if there were a Crash Course podcast.
It's true. Yeah.
Totally unanalytical though. Real quick, the best part of the documentary is when Ringo says, "I farted," and then George Martin, the producer, is like, "I haven't got it yet," because he was like all proper and posh and like very different from their Liverpoolian personalities, and he was just like, "I just thought I'd let you know. Thank you." It's the greatest exchange.
Amazing.
Best takeaway, 6 hours.
Yeah, exactly. You know, not the music.
That doesn't
not
sell
the
you.
spectacle. Yeah, right? If that doesn't sell you, nothing will. Yeah. Yeah, it's weird. It's weird to think of. It feels like a lifetime ago and like yesterday at the same time. This thing that we did weekly for so long, for so many episodes, and has now, as Steve pointed out, I think before we started recording, we are as far from when it ended as we like were when we ended that it started. It's just.
That's an interesting. I have a question for you, both of you. What do you feel that a sense of more time having elapsed the last 5 years, or more time having elapsed while we were on it?
Last 5 years.
The last 5 years, yeah. Like that's not even a
Interesting.
contest.
Yeah, even discounting the fact of COVID, which is something that added 2 decades in the span of 2 years. Just the pure level of the amount of work I'm doing these days with my shop, the other content that's hitting me, like the new books coming out, new movies coming out, new music coming out, new this, video games, that, the other stuff. There is just being so much stuff thrown at me that I look back and go, huh, I just saw that, or I just played that a week ago, and it feels like a month, or that only came out last December, it feels like years ago.
Well, it's good. The secret to extending your life psychologically is by keeping busy.
It's not necessarily the best busyness. Like,
Not the best busyness?
it's not necessarily the best busy things to be. Mostly because now, like, segue into this, I'm at 6 days a week at my new location instead of my old 4 or 5 or 6. Now it's a full-fledged 6+ days a week. So I'm working 60 or so hours a week. It's a lot of work, a lot of hours being open, but being in a new location that we moved to 3 years ago, right before the pandemic, and having a store that is now twice the size of what I used to have, or even more than twice the size that I used to have, which you still haven't been to, Steve. You're going to have to come up here one of these days.
I might bike up there. I've taken up cycling, which really cements my foray into middle agehood.
Yeah, that's true.
I've taken up cycling. I'm a cyclist now.
It's a 40, 50-mile ride for you. Just fair warning.
I did 45 on the 4th of July.
Each way?
Well, no,
Yeah,
that would be 90,
no.
John.
No, you might need to stay a night or two over to recover from it. But no, like with the new location for the store and everything like that, plus on top of severely expanding what we now carry. Okay, aside to the listeners, I run a hobby shop,
Uh-huh.
which means that I play with toys all day long, or that's
true.
essentially what it means. But we used to be.
He
just
plays with
old
he doesn't
school.
just play with toys. He plays with trains. Which,
Yeah.
as an OCD list maker, you can bet I'm all about my trains. So John, the entire time I've known him, he's had like the coolest job, and he's so low key about it.
Well, okay, yeah, no, it's a pretty awesome job to be. I have a toy store, but trains used to be 50, 60, 70% of the actual store stock and what we did in business. Now it's more like 25%, though the actual amount of trains in my store has gone up. Now we're heavily into model scene, we're heavily into the diecast scene, we're into classic collectibles from like wind up tin toys and jazz like that. I now carry Legos new in stock, so I'm getting into the mainstream. I got tons of anime these days. I carry Pokemon cards. We're like the friendly local gaming store ad nauseum. Like every single one you might have gone to as a kid growing up. Your comic book store, your model store, your wargaming store, your board game store. We're kind of transforming into all of that, which is awesome. I love it. It's everything I love to play with. I am so tired. 10 days.
Yeah,
Ugh.
I can't even imagine.
It's got to be a burden, because like that's interesting that you've taken on all those additional roles as a store, because like so many of those other stores have gone by the wayside, which thereby puts a lot more emphasis on your store. Meaning like you can make really, really good business being the only player in town, because a lot of those stores, fell away during the pandemic, or they fell away, like if they were in New York, they would have fallen away simply because rents are too high, or because of the internet, and now you could be the only game.
Yeah, the reasoning is because we so heavily expanded into other lines that we've been able to stick around. Like trains start falling, I start carrying 10,000 Matchbox cards and Hot Wheels cars hanging up on walls that are like 8 feet tall. Or that starts going down, I'm now carrying Gundam model kits because that draws in another count. And that starts going down, well, now I'm doing Pokemon. Like being able to diversify the way we have has been a godsend. Doesn't hurt that we've been like everybody's getting rid of everything. Um, People are selling collections that I've never even seen before. We've probably spent $150,000 in the last 6 to 8 months, last year, on personal collections that honestly are probably worth the better part of $1 million at
Are
this
you
point.
trying to say that when the economy goes to shit, you reap the benefits?
Well, actually, one of the things about COVID is that everybody was stuck inside, so everybody was doing hobbies and things to keep active. That was exactly what I sell. So it was, as terrible as the event is, it actually benefited my business, which is a terrible thing to have to say.
Yeah, you should have heard my ordeal about actually purchasing a bicycle. I had an old bicycle that I was riding around, and I was like, okay, this is probably not safe anymore, and I needed to buy a new one. And of course, the supply chain was a problem. So my attempt to take up that hobby was really hindered by the fact that I couldn't buy a bicycle because Shimano, which makes parts for almost every single bicycle manufacturer, was caught in a supply chain slowdown that was lasting months. So it wasn't actually until earlier this year that I was finally able to make good on that hobby. But
I will not lie. We still have issues with that. There are certain colors of paint I haven't seen in 6 months, and I stock 10 different brands of paint, and I haven't seen like olive green or flat black in weeks or months, and these are the standard colors.
it's probably
But
just your eyesight going from age, but
Right, exactly.
forget you.
we're old. That's the
But-
theme of today's podcast.
Well, then it plays into the theme. Buying collections and stuff like that has been the primary way that we've actually supplemented the fact that we can't get new product, that there's so little of it still around.
What I meant before, though, is that people are selling their own collections, though. So some people definitely are giving up their collections, because they need to make a quick buck. That's what I meant by the economy thing. Are you benefiting from that?
To some extent, yes, but mostly the people that are selling the collections are. We go through estate sales and auctions, and a lot of times, but our primary way is people just downsizing.
Oh, yeah.
I think the cusp of it is a lot of people got very heavily into hobbies at the beginning of the pandemic, needed to stay active for 6 months, and then 6 months later realized they got too much stuff, and then 6 months after that realized they were still had way too much stuff, and now they're getting rid of it. That's been
Gotcha.
a big proponent of the actual hobby scenes.
Interesting. And that's interesting because then it just perpetuates with you. It's just like the people getting into it benefits you. The people falling out of it and selling their stuff benefits you.
Yeah,
Business is good, man.
I'm still never going to be able to do this. I'm still not in it for the money. Let me put it phrase that way. You're never going to have a toy store and be in it for the money, but it feeds itself a lot better than it used to.
John, talking about this and like Steve, your initial question of like, do we feel like the 5 years from when we started to ending Crash Chords, too many podcasts, when we ended Crash Chords to then the 5 years after Crash Chords, like what feels longer? I agree with John, and it's for similar reasons, but in a different way. I mean, for one, let's get these two out of the way. Yes, the pandemic aged us all. It was a decade-long 2 years. It's still not over. People are still getting sick. But like, for me also, and I've talked about this on the show, I was also displaced for 2 years. August of 2020, we had a fire and, we were displaced. We were living in a hotel for a month, which is not a thing I ever recommend to anybody. It sounds fun, but during a pandemic, it was awful. And then we were at another apartment that we rented until we could move back. And like that aged me. And then on top of that, I lost one of my primary sources of like arts income, which was DJing burlesque shows, hosting burlesque shows, because those all stopped. And I had planned to step back around that time anyway to focus on podcasting. But on the other hand, like John finding success in this new location, like I dove 110% into podcasts. Like I launched a new sub-series. I really focused on the shows. All my shows finally joined the network that I've been on for a while. Like the pandemic allowed me to reframe and refocus on this thing that I've always liked and I've always done. But like when we were doing Crash Chords, it was like, it's a thing I do. I don't know. I just, I'm a podcaster. I know it's weird, whatever. It's a thing I do. And then now it's like the thing I'm known for, more or less. And that aged me also because it takes a lot of time. Like John talking about how he's working 6 days a week. I like how John phrased it. I work 6 days a week or more. There's not much more after 6. There's one other day. It's like, there's no more.
Are you in the red, John? Because tell us the secret of how time works.
Did you find an 8th day to work? Like, is that what happened?
Well, when you hit 80 hours in a week during Christmas season in particular, it definitely doesn't feel like 7.
That's fair. That's totally fair.
What space-time dynamics do you enjoy?
But like for me, like between editing and recording and scheduling and then still working for the most part during this time, a full-time day job that has come and gone, like, and yet still finding time to finish games and play games and watch things and spend time with my spouse. It's like, I feel like it's been so long since we did that show because it was just a simpler time. The division of labor, how we did it. It was the only thing I did until I started autographs. And then those were the only 2 things I did. And like, it just feels like a lifetime ago for me because I operate on, I mean, I was never an expert editor then. And when Steve took over, I was a fine editor. I got it done, but like I was never a great editor. And it wasn't until much later when I took over autographs again myself and started doing other things on my own that I learned. But like now I just do things kind of natively. I don't even think about it. Like I just get it done. Like I edited an episode of SideQuest before we recorded tonight. I don't know. It took me a half hour. It was a 7-minute episode. So like that tracks. Usually double the length is the amount of time it takes me to edit ish, depending on the raw audio. But like I just kind of go through the motions. I know how to do the thing.
Yeah. You develop patterns when you crank out and, do audio engineering work for a long time, which I've also spent a lot of time like refining over the last 5 years, working in audio production quite a bit more seriously than I ever did, back when we were doing the podcast. Because like I knew audio production, I knew it like but my experience was mostly from doing like a little bit of composition. I'm a musician, but also really just through our podcasts, was really the only podcast that I had ever worked on. I didn't do any podcasts before that. So, but then after that, I started working with, a bajillion podcasts scattered throughout the local news media realm through a couple of different companies. It's interesting because, like I said before, the whole like concentration of new experiences, as your brain gets those, it then all of a sudden the time seems to take so much longer because it's like your brain needs time to process all those and place them and put everything in its right little file cabinet. And so you can technically, mentally extend your life by doing that. And I would say for the first 2.5 years there, if you asked me then, like right before the pandemic, I would have said, you're right, the last 2.5 years is maybe equivalent of the 5 years that we spent on the podcast. Then the 2.5 years after that, throughout the pandemic, brought some slow times. I took a little bit of a lighter job, a less crazy job that was like a little bit less taxing on my time. And since then, things have gone a little bit faster. So the pandemic has been, not to say that there were not drawn out days there, but like it wasn't the same kind of like constant pursuit because there was a little bit of that question of like, what's my next step? Pandemic changed the game in a lot of areas. And so for anyone who wasn't already doing a thing, and I had just picked up a thing, I was just like, let's just ride this out and do this one thing for a while. I was just like, met a couple new people and it's just like talk to them. And that was kind of my world for the past 2.5 years. So that seemed to go a little bit faster than the previous 2.5. So I would put them about equal, but then there'll probably be another change in the next year. And then finally I'll say, oh yeah, I'm basically 50.
I think also part of it is like, it did feel like long, like I'm somewhere in between you two. Shocking. And like, so like I felt the length that John's talking about just the same though. Like I lost my home 2 years ago, but I'm back now. So like that 2 years felt like it went by during it felt like forever, but now it's like, I can't believe that's done. We're here now. And like all that to say too, like, I'm curious if you guys developed some different habits. Sounds like John didn't because he had no time for habits. But like I actually have completed and finished more video games. Well, I use the term complete loosely. I didn't complete them. I beat more games in the last 2 to 3 years than I've beat in my lifetime, I think.
Actually, yeah.
And I think it's because I knew I was going to be home. I was dedicating my time to it, but also part of it was I shut down my personal Facebook. It exists so the podcast pages can exist, but I don't use it anymore. I log into Facebook like once a week. I instead put all of that unnecessary social media effort into Twitter. And while Twitter is also probably just as much of a problem, they all suck. I've learned to communicate the things I'm doing in a certain way that it's fun to share that with the people following me and the audience I've curated through the podcast. And that has made the time feel like it moves a little faster because I'm doing these things and I can't believe I've done that thing. I played the entire Yakuza franchise, which for those who don't know is 8-9 games.
And none of them are short.
No. Over the course of the pandemic, I started with Yakuza 0 when we were displaced in the hotel, and I just beat Yakuza Like a Dragon the other day, which is there are 0 to 6, 7, yeah, so, and I'm now playing Judgment, which is a spin-off series. But if you had asked me that, I would have played 7 or 8 30-hour games. I'd be like, are you crazy? Who has time for that?
30-hour games, dude.
Yeah, I know.
We got locked down. And that April, I remember going, hey, let me play Assassin's Creed Odyssey, because I never played Assassin's Creed Odyssey. I didn't like the Origins because of the weird system. And I sunk 150 hours into that game. And then I went, okay, it's May. What's my next game?
Yeah.
Oh, I definitely, actually, well, we didn't really get into
I got one for you. I'm sorry. This one is really... I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just got one for you. Only one in that camp, because I don't play video games, so I can't relate on this front. But I just remembered something that I did when the pandemic started. I learned Morse code.
You would. You very much would.
Hi, Matt.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, but that was something that we all got into also. We all found stupid habits or hobbies or things to do during the pandemic that we might not have done otherwise.
It took a while, though. I mean, you have to get get it into your brain in order to do. But now, it's like a language, and now it's just it comes second nature.
Well, actually, one of the things I did was I started writing again. Nothing that I'm ever actually going to share, because I honestly, at this point, if I write something, 2/3, 3/4 of the time, I will delete the bulk of it and just leave certain snippets of particular pieces that I enjoy writing. So I write 100 pages, I might keep 10 or so on something. For example, I don't write 100 pages too often, but because they were just the scenery work or something like that. The dialogue is particularly enticing to me. I like the way I phrased it, and I like the way I did it. And that's just been one of the new ways of me to expand the way I deal with things and the way I do things. Not necessarily a new habit, because it's not habitual.
Right. It's a hobby almost.
And I know a thing or two about hobbies.
That's true.
Yeah, but
we have a whole shop of them.
Yeah, little shop of horrors. But it's been just trying to find not even artistic outlets, but just outlets, ways to focus energy. Because even with a semblance of normalcy showing up again, like I said, I'm open 6 days a week again, and I'm getting customers every day, and so on and so forth. So it is as quote normal as it possibly can be, but just finding ways to do things differently, because now so many things have to be done differently, and not because of the way you have to treat the rules in the pandemic. Just those 2 years almost solid of lockdown changed dramatically the way I function as an adult.
On this front, John, I relate with you hard.
Yeah, it's just I can't. I mean, I come home, I sit down, I watch an episode or two of whatever I'm watching. I spend an hour or so playing video games. Nowadays, I'll instead just jump into a party with people I know who are playing video games. Maybe I'll join them, maybe I won't. But they'll just be on in the background. We'll be chatting it up, and I'll be typing something out on my phone. Or I'll be going through Reddit in the really weird areas of Reddit.
Sometimes you need to get that stress out. You need to just like get the stress of the whole situation of life and everything that you need to. It needs to come out in some way. And sometimes your comfort ways are not always the best ways to do it because your brain is too accustomed to that sort of thing. If you're too accustomed to it, then you're not really getting anything out. You're just going through the motions. So yeah, still play the video games, but then do something on the side, do something that feels really cathartic. And I'm with you on that with the writing. I actually earlier in this year, maybe back in the spring, I started dabbling in a little bit of stand-up comedy. Now I have not done it. I have not actually performed, but I started
writing.
I started writing, and I've been writing a lot of content that I don't think there was always this. I always had this thing where actually my previous thing was that I always wanted to like write sketches, and sketches were always coming to mind. Me and my friend would like goof off, and we'd just started thinking of like stupid characters, and then all of a sudden all these sketches start coalescing. But they're only coalescing within the frame of the sketch, and then where do you put it? It's like, well, what are you going to do with a random sketch? You need a sketch show. You need to start. It didn't seem accessible, but like. So finally, I just started like, you know what? I just need something that can stand on its own. And I started writing some ideas down that coalesced in and of themselves that for the first time, I found like simple one-liner jokes that did not ever relate with one another could be expanded into full bits and then could be connected thematically to bits that followed. And then I could rearrange and move some stuff to the top and see what works as a better opener. And I don't think ever before in my life has the same, tool that I used to use for like music composition or just like short story writing when I was younger, ever been put so well to use so well in the comedic realm. Because now it suddenly feels structured and it feels planned. So all I can tell you is at some point, maybe within the next few months, I will probably be trying it out. There's a lot more that goes into it because the more as you write, and I know I'm also listening too. So going all the way back to like when you're telling me like what are your hobbies? It's like music is there still, but I've also been watching a lot more comedy because I'm trying also to like pick up on the rhythms of things now. Oh, never stopped watching comedy, but now I'm watching it more for, kind of unearthing the analytical side instead of just simply enjoying comedy. Now I'm actually watching it the way we used to like, crash chords it up an album. And that has sort of been a whole new thing for me, which is I would really like to make happen. It's again, no promises, because that's a deeply competitive realm, but honestly, even if I just get like 5 minutes, right now the issue will be like boiling it down, because I've written so much it could probably amount to an hour.
Yeah, no one's going to put you on stage for an hour. Yeah.
So then it's going to be a matter of like, all right, what is the strong 5 minutes?
Yeah.
Where's the strong 5 minutes in here? Where's the type 5? And figuring that out, and then working on the actual verbal delivery, which some stuff can sound great when it's written, but then the second you put it to words, it's just that blah, 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 and you trip over yourself, and it's junk. So that will be the next process, but it's a really rewarding process to just kind of be like, whole new hobby, pick it, try to bark up that tree. So to swing it back to you, John, yeah, you should probably try to do something with some of your writing.
Well, actually, one of the things that came up not too long ago, a friend of ours, a mutual friend of online buddies, we're gaming one night, and he goes, if you could wake up tomorrow morning with 10,000 hours, like, of a hobby or a job or a skill under your belt, what would it be? I immediately said writing, just to be an author. And it was... I don't know. There's got to be that next kick in the pants to get to that point, which a lot of writers, and this goes back to The Heist. What episode did we review The Heist by Macklemore?
47.
There you go. 10,000 hours. You get good at painting because you paint a lot. Or great at painting because you paint a lot. The actual lines, if we're going to go, into the minutia of that. Anyway, it's one of those things, like you said, you have to figure out how to get your hours worth of content down to that 5-minute blurb that can get you on stage. and be able to give to the audience. I got to take my thousands of pages of thought in my brain and what I've committed to actual text and channel it down to that story that I want to tell.
Right. Yeah.
But you're missing your 5 minutes. I don't know what story I want to tell. Not yet. I don't know what that's going to be yet.
It's true. That's the tricky thing. I think that's probably what once you find that, though, that'll be your hurdle. The good thing about writing, though, is just like if you want to be an author and it's release it, you don't have that extra step. It's just like I've written a lot of comedy here, but now I have to like go into this whole next phase of like the performing aspect of it, which is a whole nother intimidating creature. Whereas for you, at least, the writing can usually stand on its own. Once you get the writing, then
then it's the technical side, the publishing, the outreach.
But you can at least start getting it out there.
Yeah. What's funny, the two of you accidentally, because I have no bones about whether you actually listen to the show or not, but like you answered a question I've been asking for the last couple of years, which is like I ask guests, like, what's a good thing that came out of this horrible time, right? The pandemic's been hard for everyone on a ton of different levels. You both have kind of answered that. And I think it's because, like, the directions you both went are because we felt this freedom to experiment during the pandemic because we had no other choice, right? We had to be home. We had to lock down. We had to wear masks. We had to not be out as much. And so, like, John talking about the 10,000 hours, like I'm sure I've gotten my 10,000 hours in editing and recording by this point, though I've not actually done that math. And so I'm not 100% sure.
Well, I'll add something to that because Matt, what you're saying here is like it's not just that. Oh yeah, we have time now to indulge in some hobbies that we've always wanted to try, or that we just discovered we wanted to try. It's not just that, because in my case, it was also maybe a little bit of like a. Not to sound like it's not so much like I think it can make a difference here or anything, but like every art form has a little story to tell and has something to impart, and like to get some of that out in some of this writing, even if it is through comedy. And I have found the comedy in a lot of the tragedy, that has been going on here. It's not just that, like, it's not necessarily like that's like the whole focus of it. It's probably a very small portion of it, but in principle, it's just that people can be very dire lately, and a part of me kind of like doesn't want to let the fire go, but in a couple of ways, both in terms of like, things can still be funny. It's okay. You could still laugh. And then secondly, the idea of actually performing, getting out, like getting on stage, because so few things have been on stage. Like no more acts, no more music acts, no more. There was a point there where it's just like, oh my God, is this ever coming back? I saw a few. Oh, God bless him. I saw a few like stand-up performances online, like that were live online, and I credit them for trying, but it's hard. It's hard for it to work.
There's no laughs in the room.
There's no, right, they don't have, it's literally, it's a component, it's a fundamental component of the art form, is like they kind of need to feed off of the laughs. That 1 second delay, man, that really throws off your timing, when you're on Zoom. And I could see it like messing with them, like artists that were otherwise like totally capable. And a part of me just kind of wanted to say like, all right, I was feeling a little bit miserable about the whole music thing at the time. It's like, I write for myself. It's great. But like, I got so many other steps there before I'm like, doing anything like touring musician. And then I saw that the economics of being a touring musician are just so awful right now. There's this part of me that is a little bit of like a survival aspect, but also kind of like it's almost like the way forward to just immediately get something onto the stage that is my heart without all of this like crazy work that goes into it. The touring musician is just it almost seems insurmountable in some cases.
Wait. You're complaining about making money as a musician when the written word has been dead for half a century?
That's not about money. Yeah, well,
my dream is to literally be a starving artist.
Yeah. Well, essentially, yes. I mean, but it's not so much about the money. It's just like I always plan to like have some job to fall back on. But in addition to that, but it's just like if you're gonna commit your time toward a hobby, the worst thing in the world is to be barking up a tree that all of a sudden gets uprooted from beneath you, which is what the pandemic did to a lot of people. So like, not saying that couldn't happen with comedy too, but it was like a sense of stubbornness, a sense of like, no, I'm not going to let this get to me. I'm going to think about the future. I'm going to think about the future. Is it an optimistic future where this, even if I find that I couldn't even do stand-up comedy, like I will find a way to parlay this into the world. call it a little form of artistic diversification. You know.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think a little stubbornness goes a long way. I mean, I think the only reason I have a career as career, whatever that means, as a podcaster is because I made it happen. I obstinately kept doing it. Like, you know, I mean, my listeners know, I'm sure, but I don't make bank from this. I don't live off. Like, I'm lucky if I break even from podcasting, and that's okay. Like, regardless of whatever I make, I pour it back into what I'm working on. Like, that's always been the case. But like, it's one of those things where I think one of the more positive experiences to come out of the podcast is my determination to just do shit. And like, I've always been a fairly optimistic person, but like my ability to just buckle down and go, wow, I really don't want to do whatever this is, but I'm going to get it done, whether it's editing something at like midnight before the day it's supposed to air or whatever else it is. It's like, there were times where it was easy, but it was never a thing that like the way my brain works, where I was just like, this is something that I can do in my sleep. Like, I can sometimes, but a lot of it was just stubborn determination of like, I need an outlet. I want to do this thing. And like, that's where any growth and diversity in podcasting has come from, and why I started pursuing doing when I felt safe going to conventions. Like I had a press pass for PAX Unplugged, for PAX East. I'm going to PAX West in September, which I've mentioned, which I've never been to PAX West, and I have a media badge for that. Like, momentum that I lost because of the pandemic is starting to come back again, and that's exciting. And I know the only reason I have any of that momentum is because I stubbornly went, I'm going to just pour everything into this and hope that something comes out of it. And I have. Like,
that optimism and determination, you know, again, is part of one of the main reasons why we did do 5 years, me, you, and John.
Yeah.
It's this is a quote I don't think I ever really shared with you guys. It's from Little Rascals, like OG Little Rascals. And if I remember the scene correctly, they're getting in their soapbox racer, and I believe it's Spanky looks over and goes, I don't know where we're going, but we're on our way. And that was kind of like the way we did with the podcast. Like, we didn't know what we were doing. We were just going forward for a while.
And that's the way you got to be with everything.
Yeah.
If you're not on your way, then you're not going anywhere.
Right.
That's the antithesis of that. So it's a good way to be.
Yeah. It's been fun to go down memory lane. I'm glad that you both came on the show. I really appreciate it. Like, I couldn't think of a better way to celebrate 200 episodes of this show, a show that would never have existed if it weren't for Crash Chords, because like, we did it as part of Crash Chords for a little while, and then I was like, what if we just released it as a separate thing? And then what if I just did this? And like, it's funny too, because most of the people I used to emblematically want to admire have mostly turned out to be shitheels, and I don't associate with anymore or even follow their stuff. But like, those inspirations led me to that. But like, this show absolutely wouldn't have happened without the two of you, because I had my feet wet doing the other thing to do this thing.
Well, you're welcome. Once again, I think it's appropriate. I'm not sure if I should be welcoming you.
I'll expect my kickbacks
welcome.
in the mail any day now.
Sure, the day I make $1, you'll get $2.
Ooh, $2.
$2.
Oh yeah, the good old days when Steve was the editing, Matt was the space, and I was paying the $10 a month to make sure we were getting hosted.
Definitely costs more than that now, that's for sure.
Yeah. Oh, thank God I don't have to be the money anymore.
Surprise, you're the face. The only Zoom face I can't see right now.
As we're recording that we can't see. Before we wrap up, and before I have y'all do my sign off, which I don't have to explain because y'all know it better than anybody, I would love for you guys to just tell folks, if you wish to be found online, where they can find you or anything you're doing. John, please promote the shop. Tell folks where to go. I know we have New York listeners, but like, I guess Steve first and then John, just tell folks where they can find you online. And Steve, if they want to check out anything you're working on in the future, where they might be able to find it.
Sure. My name is Stephen Nagel. I'll have a portfolio ready soon. But remember that name if we're going to be doing stand-up comedy or music properly anytime soon. But until then, you can find me as the voice of a few national magazines and local podcasts. I am the voice of Foreign Affairs. So if you check out the Foreign Affairs podcast, you can hear lots of very prolonged, detailed, but fascinating stuff. Just really, it's fascinating. it it's very me. I do very much enjoy reading Foreign Affairs, and I like being one of the voices for it, along with a few local podcasts like the Colorado Sun podcast, Daily Sun Up, and a few others there. But you know what? Stick with that and follow me around, and just remember the name Steve Nagel one day, because it will come up in other
Google
contexts,
it every morning.
I assure you. Make a day of it. Make a ritual. Your morning Joe. No, Steve. Sorry, your morning Steve.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I'm John Sanders, and I don't believe I even have any social media active at this moment. But if you're into hobbies and in the New York State area, or at least near the city, I'm Westchester Trains and Hobbies at the Galleria Mall, 100 Main Street, in White Plains, New York. We're underneath the food court, only person on the actual floor. It's a nice big old store with a tiny little hole in the wall entryway. We do hobbies of all shapes and sizes, and we're mostly there just because we, as a group, we just like having fun. So sure as hell don't do it for the money.
Yeah,
man.
That's relatable. Well, I'm so glad that you guys could join me. This was great. I will not commit to us doing anything music related anytime soon, but it's not out of the realm of possibility. I miss doing Crash Chords. I don't miss some of the long nights and the stressful retakes and re-edits and adjustments. But I definitely...
also I don't miss, which I realize is exactly the same now as it was back then, sweating it out on a hot summer day with no air conditioner.
Yeah,
I don't know why I
exactly.
thought that would be different, but I'm resisting turning it off here in my own room, just as we used to do as a group. And I can't take another minute of that.
But I appreciate you guys coming on the show, and I'm hoping that we can collaborate on something in the nearest future. But that said, we have a saying on this podcast, and it's born out of my indefinitely on hiatus music podcast, Crash Chords. And the saying is, music is life and life is good. A saying that I think I came up with, but that became our language for 200 plus episodes, 250 episodes. So to sign off the show, if I could have Steve say music is life and then John say and life is good, we will wrap up the show.
Music is life.
And life is good.
That's it for this episode of CPOV Autographs. Our theme music is by Michael Kill. Our logo was designed by Case Aiken and Joey Amons. If you liked the show, please rate and review wherever you get your podcasts. It's a great way to help us reach more listeners. Questions, comments, or guest recommendations? Email mr.matt.storm@gmail.com or hit us up on Twitter at CPOV Autographs. Thank you so much for listening.
Hey there, Screen Beans. Have you heard about Screen Snark?
Rachel, this is an ad break. They aren't screen beans until they listen to the show.
Fine. Potential Screen Beans. You like movies and TV shows, right?
I mean, who doesn't? Screen Snark is a casual conversation about the movies and television shows that are shaping us as we live our everyday lives.
That's right, Matt. We have a chat with at least one incredible guest every episode, hailing from all walks. We've interviewed chefs,
Writers, costumers, musicians,
yoga teachers, comedians, burlesque dancers,
folks in the film and TV industry.
and more.
We'd be delighted for you to join us every other Monday on the Certain POV Podcast Network.
Or wherever you get your podcasts, fresh and tasty off the presses.
What? That's not.
Can I call them Screen Beans now?
Fine.
Screen Beans!
So tune in and we'll see you at the movies or on a couch somewhere.
'Cause you're all Screen Beans now.
CPOV. CertainPOV.com.